Welcome to today's AIA Baltimore Practice Management Committee's program, COVID Resource Webinar, New Technologies and Tactics for Construction Administration during COVID-19. Today's program will be worth 1 AIA Continuing Education LU credit. Please see the chat box for the Google form to fill out to ensure you receive your AIA credit. Also, questions can be asked in the chat box, which will be held for the question and answer session at the end of the presentation, as lines will be muted during the presentation. And our presenters, Jason Donahue. Jason is a senior regional partner of Multivista Mid-Atlantic, the world leaders in reality capture technologies for the construction industry. Jason credits his decade-long experience in development and his degrees in advertising, business, and photography as the unforeseen perfect springboard for his division's success in showing the world what Multivista is and growing the company's portfolio of sciences, services, and clients. Trey Winstead. Prior to joining Whiting Turner in 2002, Trey lived in San Francisco and was a technology project manager for WineShopper.com. Trey worked with David, Nick, and Jason of Multivista to bring this process through beta testing to punch list reality and is using it today on the new Towson University Science Complex. Other projects include the University of Baltimore School of Law, PSU School of Architecture, and the UMB Biopark Building 2. David Mayhew. David Mayhew, FAIA, is a registered architect with over 40 years of comprehensive experience in architecture, construction, and planning. For the last 24 years, Mr. Mayhew has served as the university architect at Towson University, where he oversees the design of capital improvement projects and participates in the development and implementation of the campus master plan. Today's AIA Baltimore Practice Management Committee program will cover the use of Multivista's Virtual Visual Documentation Management Program for the general project oversight of construction activities for use by contractors, architects, engineers, and other professionals in the building industry. Today's program is also offered in relation to virtual construction documentation and observation from a remote location, as may be relevant to the COVID-19 pandemic for those professionals in the building industry and supporting roles. Covered topics will include project management, project team communication, project schedule, quality control, request for information or RFIs, change orders, coordination with the design team, construction progress, punch list and punch list verification, and the verification of completed work. And now to Jason.
Hi all. Good morning. This is Jason Donahoe with Multivista. I am the senior regional partner, as Basil stated, here in the Mid-Atlantic. Trying to see if you can show screen, Nick, so we can show the actual presentation.
Does this need to be made presenter?
No, it's your screen.
There we go. Nice. All right, folks. Thank you all for coming. Sounds like we got a pretty good audience this morning. I'm going to go through these slides and bring you up to speed on where we're at with some new technologies in construction that have been evolving over the last 17 years. We're going to go ahead and start going through the deck here. As stated, if you have any questions or any further interest in our Q&A session, please log in through the chat and let the team know, and we will address your questions at the end of the credit hour. Next slide. So basically, guys, we're getting a chance, and we've been doing this for about 8 years with AIA. The technology keeps changing in the world about as fast as your phone upgrades. But by going through this course load of this 45-minute session, you will get a credit hour. We will get you a proof of completion sent out to you, and we'll coordinate that through your AIA chapter. Next. So exploring how technology is changing the way we manage projects. I'm sure you're bombarded these days in your inbox with all kinds of new technologies that are constantly coming out and trying to, looking to create efficiencies in construction. Especially now during COVID, we are looking to stay on top of monitoring our projects remotely. It's a mandate and construction is essential. So this is a great opportunity to show you some visual technologies that are really giving you access to your projects remotely. Next. So when we started looking at how to document projects, it evolved from, and we as an industry, it evolved from pay application oversight. You needed proof of completion upon weekly or bi-weekly or monthly milestones to show where your money is going as a project team and stakeholders. There's always been QA, QC processes in play, and through the advent of visual technologies and be able to share that information, that pay application process has kind of evolved into something that can really help you have oversight to one of the major issues in construction, that's construction defects. So these are did you know questions, and they're kind of arbitrary in the sense that I'm not expecting you to answer, but please chime in via chat. The average construction and contractor and subcontractor is building about 10% of errors into their budgets with not even knowing it for their projects. This information was acquired by a study that the University of Nevada, Las Vegas found that 54% of all construction defects are due to faulty workmanship of installation or misinterpretation of design and product placement. CD claims, construction defect claims, cost the insurance industry about $13 million per day, and the average claim takes about 2.5 years to resolve. 30% of general contractors' profits are going towards rework. So the world as a whole is trying to get leaner and more efficient at construction, and because of the COVID-19 scenarios in play across the different metropolitan statistical areas in the United States, different technologies and platforms are being adopted to help make this curve. Next slide. So our learning objectives today, and I have to move my little iconic imagery here. A review of traditional photographic documentation will be teed off on quickly. We'll show that what specs are kind of boilerplate and put in most of the Division I general requirements and most of the construction bid packages that go out on the street these days. And then we're going to dive into the new stuff, new technologies and how they're being leveraged. And then we'll look at who's using these types of services. And we do have a great panel today to help explore during Q&A of how that's leveraged from the AEC or OAC team. Next slide. So the traditional specification has always been included for at least the last 20 years. There's a cost, there's an allowance put in play per project to be allotted in Division I general specifications. And there's also a unit price breakout. And a photographer is chosen based on their qualifications or is done in-house. Sometimes, a lot of times, the specification is completely overlooked. But we are finding that now, these days, because of the ability to communicate quickly and the power of digital imagery and graphic user interfaces, these technologies are quickly coming to save us time and money in construction. So a traditional spec, and we see it all the time. It is about 20 photos a month is the standard spec that is put in play. You're probably familiar with this as an architectural group. You probably just slide this in, not maybe giving it a second thought because you're busy designing these amazing facilities that we occupy and inhabit and use as our daily social, cultural, and business and educational areas to gather and grow as a society. So the traditional spec evolved when digital imagery came out. It left the 8x10 world and jumped into where you would need better knowledge of what you were photographing or what the photographs were being taken of. And that was being acknowledged by submitting some kind of key plan that would address the location of the image, what the purpose of the image was, what the person was thinking. Definitely need the basic essentials here at point 3, the name of the project, contact for the photographer. So if you had a question, you could question what they were actually trying to get an image of. The architect, the contracting firm, the date the photograph was taken, and a general description of the perspective. So traditional photographic documentation at 20 photos a month, even in a digital era on a shared drive or a Dropbox or some kind plugged into some kind of submittal software or app, is really subject to interpretation. I mean, we know that we're at the corner of a building here. We know that substantial elevations are completed. We know that glass is going in, windows are going in, curtain wall. But other than that, we don't really have a strong communication tool in play, and it's not very shareable. It's just an image taken of a location at a moment in time. Same goes for the interior. General overview, 20 images a month, taking a picture of what's going on. Pay application oversight related to this based on time of the month and completion of work and placement of materials. So these are going to be questions we can chime into at the end of the presentation here for the credit hour, but how to use photo documentation today. And I know the demand has gone through the roof lately for visual remote access to your project, especially when you can't set boots on the ground every 2 weeks or can't make it to the job site at all because it's across the United States or in even another county, and their access requirements are limited depending on the state of the governor's decision on who can be on the job site and how relevant the construction work is. Their redundant question here will be, what benefits do you get from the photographs or visual information you're seeing on your projects that you are tracking? And then how is this a collaborative tool? So how does the owner, architect, and general contractor use all this visual information to help stay on time and on budget and stay to design and spec on your job? So photographic documentation goals. Definitely a request for information, obviously. I need to see what's going on. I have a question, or it's a question from the field going to the trailer, going to the office, or vice versa. Change orders that arise, whether they're upstream or downstream directed. The ability to communicate, kind of touched on that already, just to visually know what's going on and not being able to have access. Definitely reduce site visits. We're in a reduced site visit world right now because of mandates. Verification of specification, obviously. Are we following design and spec? And then accountability, definitely from a project management standpoint or a CA services standpoint. Who or how do we track a potential construction defect or a material substitution or an unnecessary change order? And then the traditional, where's the money going? Where are we at in the stage of construction? So traditional photographic documentation. The pros, originally it was architectural photography. Architectural photographers would also take progress photos, and they were good looking shots. Sometimes they're glossy and 8.5 by 11 in sleeves, or served up digitally as the advent of digital photography took over around 96, 97, 98. And then how this information was being used, it was definitely used in project meetings collaboratively, even before the internet. Just a visual interpretation without having to walk the entire job site, so you had talking points in your meetings. It was relatively inexpensive to capture 20 photos or so a month, and it was great to show the quality of the project at completion, whether from internal PR or external PR, across owner, GC, and architect. The cons of the traditional spec, to manually index and explain verbally what a picture is telling you, is definitely a con in the ability and the kind of technologies we have available today. The coverage and frequency was is, according to traditional specs, not very consistent. It's not very shareable, and there's not a lot of continuity to it. So trying to find a picture, trying to figure out what was going on at the time. We can call it a shoebox the old school way, or we can call it searching through files and thumb drives or on your phone, trying to remember what you were thinking when you took the picture, whether you're, no matter what stakeholder you are in the organization or the project team, leaves a lot of time for searching. So we can still call it a shoebox. Lack of portability, lack of sharing this across your entire stakeholder team to make quick decisions and get back on track. And who's taking the photo? Obviously, if the architectural photographer was taking the photo, they'd be going for all the good stuff. Obviously, everybody wants to represent the best elements of their project. So not having a third party administer the documentation isn't a very shareable piece of visual information across the project team. So emerging technologies. We call them boxes of technology these days because they're constantly changing. The SLR cameras, high resolution cameras, are still great, even though our smartphones take amazing pictures. The resolution and detail of traditional SLR cameras is still bar none at this time. The scanning capabilities of photographic scanning, or just immersive technology in general, is constantly changing. This is changing as fast as your phones are changing. The advent of drones being legal, to be able to commercially, legally fly a drone, started in about 2016, 2017. Up to then, it was wild, wild west. These were matters of homeland security, personal privacy, public safety, and construction risk management, because drones have a mind of their own, and they still do. So you definitely have a great perspective, basically putting an eye in the sky, but definitely there's a lot of risk associated to doing that. And then webcams, any kind of video feed for that matter, whether it's handheld or stuck on a pole. The ability to track your project overall, over time, visually, aesthetically, telling a story of how your project came together for PR purposes, and the ability to track your elevations coming together is a great piece to this whole visual puzzle of emerging technology. So third-party documentation is truly that, documenting, telling a story of how the project's coming together in overlapping imagery of every square inch of the project inside and out with about 99.9% coverage. This information is visually indexed and categorized. It's overlaid onto the design drawing or plugged into the 3D model. And it's shareable. With the advent of the internet, high resolution imagery, and graphic user interface technologies, you can pretty much collaborate and share this information, and then have a life cycle tool. If you're taking visual information of the entire project from start to finish, the life cycle, the folks that inherit the asset can see inside slabs, walls, floors, ceilings, elevations for the life of that project. So they have a living, breathing, true visual as-built piece of information that'll help them down the road. So the goal here in the emergence of all these technologies and the internet and everything else I was talking on or speaking on there is, let's create a system that will comprehensively document the entire construction process from start to completion, from a historical overview and construction milestones. So frequency-based progress documentation, and then also critical milestones. We're about to pour concrete, what's in my slab? We're about to close in walls, what's in my wall? What's in my ceiling? What's in my raised floor? And this information is planned, of course, along with your critical path milestones and your 2-week look ahead, because things constantly change inside and out, acts of God, subject to weather, and even global pandemics. This information is now easily attainable within, we'd like to say 3 to 6 to 24 hours, depending on the need of the project and the sensitivity of the type of construction. And this applies to quick RFI responses, change order oversight, and team collaboration. Take a coffee break here for a second. capturing a series of photographs from the same perspective at time-based intervals throughout the build really tells the story of how things are coming together. And if these are overlapping of every wall, floor and ceiling and elevation, then you really have something that's going to be comprehensive in nature for project team coordination and communication, definitely in a remote access environment. So how does it work? So basically, by linking images to graphic user interfaces, in this case arrows, and associating it to the architectural drawings to the same location over time, you can put metadata in terms of date stamp, time stamp, the perspective, notations, markups, and it's accessible 24 hours a day. In today's world, I don't know if it's Monday or Saturday anymore. It seems like we are all constantly working from our homes. So this is something that you can access anytime and keep an eye on your job. Multiple projects simultaneously if more than one project's going on in your world right now. So by capturing all this visual information and making it easily attainable, the accountability and transparency is really amazing. You're almost eliminating destructive verification in a lot of cases. Here we have a classic example of, so our subcontractors and our trades. The tile guy came in, covered up the utility outlet, and it was definitely there. Was everybody there to watch and know that it happened? No, but when it came time to do your final punch or your walkthrough and you say, hey, there's supposed to be an outlet there, for ripping that thing apart with the power of your smartphones and apps these days, you could literally stand there and deconstruct, or be at your home office and deconstruct and know that, oh, hey, I just got to pop this tile off and the outlet's actually there. So accountability and transparency is quickly put in play within minutes. So these might be arbitrary numbers. Please chime in at the end. But we've put this information together over time from talking to folks in the industry. So you can kind of read through and see hourly rates. You can apply those to what your firms do. Think about the amount of time spent on trying to request and find information out that you don't have visual access to without driving to the job site or hearing from 3 to 4 or 5 people. And just imagine in your mind the ability to save this kind of time by quickly coordinating and responding to situations that arise on all construction projects. Construction milestones. Capturing key construction milestones post-inspection and pre-cover-up gives you a long-standing memorialized record. It's true as-built information. It's not just record drawings. It's not updated redlined as-builts. It's true visual as-built information. These days, we're calling it reality capture. So mechanical, electrical, and plumbing stage is a critical stage of all projects. The ebb and flow of these change constantly. Placement of material and material substitution come into question. And then rework, obviously, once drywall installation goes in, or ceiling tiles are dropped, or hard ceilings are put in place, especially on the interior sides of busier facilities like hospitals, laboratories, and Department of Defense type projects, government related projects. This is very critical. But for the life cycle, for the people that inherit this asset, someone can walk into this project from an ownership side, from a facility management side, pull out their smartphone and click through imagery and be there back in time as if they were there the day it was built. Immersive technologies. Immersive is like the BIM word. Building information modeling means about 1 million different things. Well, immersive technologies are scanning equipment, whether they're photographic, laser scanning, photographic scanning, and it's constantly updating and changing. But this is moving into the world of supplementing the photography. The resolution is getting better. The metadata is getting better. It's getting easier to capture. Takeoff data is getting easier to measure and share in terms of cloud point information that hides behind the image. And this is really a big part of the emerging world of technology that we're talking about. So we kind of hit on all these. The MEP work, just to be able to instantly know what you got, where it went, or where the materials were placed over time, how it was put together, but also for future renovations and additions onto a design team that I'm speaking to today. If you could walk into a room or a space and know that entire space that's concealed, and you have to do a renovation, then your need for not knowing if the as-built information is accurate according to drawings is easily overcome by being able to visually see where everything is by just taking off the drywall, the insulation, the ceiling tiles or hard ceilings, even out the outdoor utilities, the connection points, just be able to see that visually, make quick decisions on future renovations and additions. Next slide. Pre-slab concrete work is always something that if there is a hiccup or a change order, pulling in X-ray equipment to do some kind of coring or some kind of modification post-pour is time-consuming, expensive. Usually happens after hours. With traditional overlaying photography in the new era of photographic tech, you could at least make a decision based on this imagery tied to your floor plan of where what is. In the advent of new tech emerging, there's actually measurable photography now that can actually tell you exactly where something is, so you can kind of step away from the whole old world of having to X-ray for coring or checking your structural integrity of your slabs. So one thing for sure, and a lot of concrete companies like the accountability here too, but just the oversight to placement of rebar and waterproofing really helps validate and save the project lots of money down the road, especially if you can control it, correct it during construction while the folks are there on site. UAVs, drones, they're amazing. The ability to capture visual information related to every element of your project. You can do easy mosaic mapping now, where you can create a three-dimensional model that you can plug into your design software packages and create and drop in the design into a landscape that you haven't yet built or got approval to finally go vertical with. But it's also leveraged daily now. Instead of just a boots on the ground photographer taking overlapping pictures, you can document anything above 4 stories. You can look straight in the window, monitor these elevations, these waterproofing details, do roof inspections, both during construction and at completion, and civil site studies that you can do measuring very accurate measurable data of cut and fill and other relevant aspects of yard pipe and utility runs. So I'm kind of speaking to the benefits as I speak to the imagery that we're popping up here. But definitely everybody's pretty fascinated with UAVs. There are a lot of folks out there still wild westing it, flying illegally. There are a lot of liabilities associated with that for both owner and GC. But the drones are definitely a technology that is here now. They certainly capture more information than going up in a helicopter or a Cessna and doing monthly flyovers. And from monitoring, improving safety and minimizing risk on having to go up and do inspections both during construction and post-construction for curtain wall or waterproofing installations. Not so many people having to hang over the side of a building anymore to do these kind of inspections. Here's a great example believe this building's 12 to 14 stories tall. But you can digitally zoom in on these images, and this is a static slide, but you can see the sequence images across the bottom, and you can see how the waterproofing is in play. And you could zoom all the way into the corner of those windows there and see a hairline crack. So the power of the UAV world is here, and it's proving to be very valuable. Also, the ability to zoom in here, either if you want to inspect that roof, or if you want to have something to take a look at these utility runs now or in the future, once it's covered up. The measurable data is very accurate. You can get accuracy within a few millimeters depending on the flight of the drone path. And you can see below the sequence of images are all navigable. You can mark these images up, you can share them, and you can use this across your entire project team. And then I kind of spoke on this a few seconds ago. The three-dimensional world of the same flight, while the bird's in the sky, there's so much metadata, visual metadata that can be captured. It's absolutely amazing. So you could zoom all the way in on this. This is reality capture in a drone UAV perspective, but it is showing you the landscape of this hospital, I believe. And you can zoom all the way around this, spin it on a top, and you could even drop it into Revit or Navisworks and plug in your add-on building if you wanted to see how it would look across the landscape. Webcams, they're everywhere. You can't drive down a street anywhere these days without seeing one. In construction, most notably, they're great for just tracking overall progress. And the technology is getting better and better. You can read a license plate from 100 yards with some of the tech out there these days. And you can make this very shareable. You can also mark up and annotate these images, do call outs. From some of the new cameras out there, you can have the power of one camera that would otherwise take 4 cameras to give you the visual information you would need to capture different archival areas of your project coming together. So real-time oversight, you can actually look at this on your phone these days, see a live feed. Obviously, it's a great marketing tool. Edited at the end. You see this in a lot of offices of their projects coming together. And it's a great way to capture the historical data, especially for project overruns. If you have a 16-month project and it went 24 months and you want to go back in time, this will tell you a lot. One thing that really has evolved in the visual world and now can, because of the ability to condense data, understanding, especially for facility management, vendor training, having a third party do it and come in is a huge benefit to the owner, because all this information can be saved in the cloud, and someone can stand, a facility management team member can pull up a edited chaptered file on a specific piece of equipment and learn how to use it right there on the spot while they're standing right in front of the equipment. That's very powerful just for knowledge of how to use your assets, non-static equipment, but also for emergencies. Next slide. So facility management videos, training videos, overall construction videos, and inspection videos. Video information can be condensed and saved in the cloud now, and it can be associated to the location on the drawing. So video has really changed from just being a webcam in the sky to a really perfected tool for managing facilities for the life cycle. So go ahead and look over these defects. These are the most common. This was highlighted by Zurich Risk Management several years ago. They're one of the largest insurers of construction risk in North America. But everything seems to be water related for long-term defects, whether it's water coming from the outside in or water coming from the inside and trying to make its way out. We're going to show one sample here in a sequence of images how you can drill in a non-static platform and cut it off, cut the issue off at the pass, not only just by your envelope engineer using about 10% visual captures, I think is what they capture. Here you're going to see documentation of every single close-in on this hotel. And so every single one of these arrows is pointing at a window. And so someone noticed an issue here, they flagged it, and they were able to mark up on the next slide where the weep holes were being filled in. And so this is, you know, if you're proactive with this kind of stuff and it's available within 6 to 24 hours, you can offset the future costs of your walls filling with water, mold infiltration, and other issues that would evolve from this. So the new specification in photographic documentation is emerging to really focusing on an index system that's able to navigate, that you're able to navigate on the actual drawings. And it's accessible on an online interface. So, and it's shareable. So we're talking about continuity and data capture, visual information. We're making sure it's shareable, and you're making sure that it's overlapping in detail. Everything is time-stamped by date per the old spec, but it's just a lot more visual information that's very comprehensive, which is true as-built information and what is emerging into true reality capture information. So if you combine the inspection grade high resolution imagery to capture actual conditions throughout the life cycle of the project, you are capturing these milestones. You are telling the true story of the as-built conditions of your asset. And this information, again, is shareable and accessible on any kind of smart device these days. And again, the simultaneous communication and collaboration is a game changer for cutting off defects, RFIs, verifying change orders, and lifecycle management. So this is redundant here, I apologize, but definitely focusing on a checklist of an updated spec that is shareable information and it's interactive, but also gives you, the stakeholders, the ability to add your own information to this living, breathing, as-built archive. So the index system is not only executed in a very comprehensive story of the entire asset, but it's also information that you can use when you do your walkthroughs, when you do your punch, when you do your quality control measures. It's a collaborative system that can be open book and shared by the entire team. So the uploading of files is also pretty relevant here. So not only are you uploading a piece of visual information to a location on a drawing, but you're also able to upload warranty information, the change order information, the 2-week look ahead. That's information can be added to the location, to the drawing. And this information is shareable, and it can be used for life cycle, or it can be used internally. You don't have to broadcast on a shared platform necessarily the information you're capturing. You can keep that subject to shareability across your project team, or just a note to yourself that only you would see. So the permissions I just talked about, you can be an active user or an acting user. You can share it with all project team members, or you can be subject to just one-off communication across different stakeholders. This repository is living, breathing, it's forever. So from a risk side, you might kind of wince at this concept, but this is where the world is headed. The ability to digitally know the issue, correct it, stay on time and on budget, and then for the owner to know exactly what they got is very powerful in today's world of lean construction. So I already talked about this as well. There's ways to populate PDF printouts and temporary shareable data for things that are going to get corrected. And we'll speak on that in our Q&A portion of how this visual information can be shared across one platform. And again, just layered with input from across different organizations, but it's continuity and it's shareable. So there's not 4 or 5 different kinds of technologies capturing visual information that are trying to plug into each other. It is a one-stop index categorized visual platform with additional metadata that can be shared openly. All right. Well, I think I hit my mark. Basil, you want to take over here, or?
Hey, Jason, this is David Mayhew.
Hi, David.
Can you all hear me? I think I was going to speak next just for a couple of minutes. Thanks for including me. I know I was here primarily to be on the panel and answer any questions, but we wanted to take just about 5 minutes and at least discuss briefly the owner's perspective on this type of tool. And, you know, at Towson University, even though I'm an architect, I serve primarily as an owner's representative. And, you know, we have a large campus of buildings. We have over 5 million square feet of buildings, over 50 buildings. And we've done more than $1 billion of new construction in the last 15 years. So I'll tell you from an owner's perspective, we first got intrigued by this tool as a complement to our as-built information. We started recognizing that having a comprehensive photo documentation of all of our buildings inside walls would be an asset that we could use 10 to 15 years later. Our O&M, operations and maintenance people, were very intrigued by being able to pull up a wall and see what was behind it. And so we felt initially that was a good investment to supplement our as-builts, and began to use this comprehensive documentation. But I'll tell you that as we've used it for just over about 10 years now, we really found that the other benefits, in my case anyway, in my opinion, almost outweigh that. Because although we have that asset, we've not really had to go back too often and look inside of a wall. But in terms of a construction administration tool, we've just found that it's really been invaluable to be able to use it for communication and documentation. We can exchange information more readily. And in today's environment, we never anticipated this at all, but in the COVID situation where we're all working remotely and don't have access to our buildings or our site, we can communicate just as effectively with photographs and looking at the same picture. We've even done virtual punch outs recently on a building using this photo documentation platform. But, you know, Jason mentioned the new technologies of cameras and drones and higher definition cameras, and you know, that's all evolved. I mean, we can all practically take pictures with our phones nowadays that are adequate. But to me, the real emerging technology here has been the platform, the interface that allows you to share, exchange, document, and store and manage all of this information. Because when you're going to commit to going in and taking thousands of pictures of your building, it's useless if you can't use it and if you don't have access to it. And we found that by having this platform where literally we can, I can do it from my phone app, but we can generally go online. You can see all of our buildings and all of our projects. You can click on any one of them, open it up. And as Jason described, you know, with an interface that involves all of our floor plans and site plans, we can go to any point, click on a view. We can stand at that spot and go through the job from a day time perspective and click through the sequence of photos from one single spot. Or if we want to go back and visit the job site on a given day and walk around the entire job site, we can set it up to do it that way. And so we found this tool to just be valuable for lots of reasons. We've gone back and looked at flashing details to see if they were installed properly. We've gone through and shown progress. We've used it to communicate to executives. If we want to send a progress set of photos to somebody or let them log on live to see a webcam, just a tremendous way to share information. Everybody, can take pictures. And of course, it's great to have somebody who is a specialist that comes along, knows how to take high quality photos from the same locations, and they're documented comprehensively, and it's all archived and organized that way. But the other benefit of having a platform like this is anybody that takes a picture out on the job site can upload it into the platform. There's special locations where you can have, just comment photos, or, if the architect is doing his regular inspection of the job site, he no longer has to worry about capturing all the information because that's already being done. But if he sees something particular that he wants to note, or a particular photograph, he can take it, and using this platform, it automatically gets uploaded and archived the same way all the other photos do. So it's date stamped, it's put in a proper location, it's available for the entire owner and construction team to use. That interface and the communication of all of this information is where I think the technology has really taken off, because, and there are other platforms, whether it's eBuilder or Newforma, that, all have made construction administration a lot easier, and, they've facilitated a lot of change of information. But a specific tool for all of the photo documentation we found really complements that and works well with that. So when we first started investing in this, most of our construction is done with construction manager at risk. And to some extent, we recognized that we were paying for photographs from somebody. I mean, we typically had that scope included in the CM's scope of work. And like Jason described, we typically got the 20 progress photos a month that were put into the executive summary report. And the CM would go around and he'd take appropriate pictures. And, he usually wasn't taking something that looked bad, that's for sure. He would take shots that made everything look good. And it served its purpose. But as we began to want to have a comprehensive archive, we said, okay, we're going to do this on a building. We actually had the construction manager build it into his scope, and he contracted to provide all of this service. And, that worked fine. But as we recognized this is something we were going to do on all of our buildings and something that we wanted to continue to do, we realized that it would be better off if we had the contractual relationship and we maintained it that way across multiple projects with multiple construction managers and multiple architects. Our information system would be consistent. And that's been a big benefit, because, we have all these different jobs with different contractors and different scales. And, this way we have the same documentation, the same platform, the same interface on all of our different buildings, which is a tremendous benefit. We also were able to control the information. Hopefully, you wouldn't have to use this information in a litigious situation, but if you ever did and you needed to go back and you wanted to see if something was constructed properly or not, owning the information is a benefit. But that said, I think there's flexibility. I think any contractual relationship would allow everybody to have access to the information. But, we just found more and more and more ways to use this as time has gone on. It's the kind of thing that, you take for granted construction photos, and you don't think much of it until you start to have the benefit of using it in all these ways. It starts to occur to you that, what a real asset it truly is. The video cameras has been a tremendous marketing tool. At the end of a given job, we'll create a time lapse of the entire construction over 2 years, and it can be condensed down to a couple of minutes. The live webcams have allowed, us to see progress, to see what's going on. And I admit our senior administration has appreciated being able to just pull up on their computer very conveniently and take a look at what's going on the webcam. So these are things that if you don't know them, you don't really miss them. But once you have them, you start to realize what a benefit they really are.
Very, very good. I would also like to give Trey some time, and then
the last thing I want to say is that, every job is different, and obviously you don't necessarily need this level of comprehensive coverage on every single job, but you can tailor the scope and tailor the services to what you need. You may not need photos every month, but you may want to have all the milestones covered. You may want a webcam and certain level of photos, but that can all be customized per the job. So.
very good. Thank you. Trey, would you like to discuss anything for maybe 5 minutes before we go to a question and answer?
Yeah, I'll just, what I'd like to run through real quick is sort of, we had Towson and Whiting Turner, we had Multivista involved earlier in the project to do what photographs David was talking about. But when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, and all of a sudden, both Whiting Turner, architect, owner, were no longer coming to the site, and we're in the part of the project where we have to start doing punch out. That's something that, you know, you really need. In the past, you needed to be on site to look, so you can get close, you know, see all the nooks and crannies, basically. Hopefully there aren't too many of those, but, you know, really get into the detail. And so what was really helpful is over a course of about 6 weeks, we developed a process where Multivista would have their photographer go in there and take an immersive shot like you're looking at right now, which is a sort of a moment in time 3D shot. But then as you start to zoom in on these pictures, you know, you can get to a pretty good level of detail, quite honestly. And but we were looking for a little more. So we also then had them do the SLR, the still photographs, so that the detail was there and everybody felt comfortable that they were getting a complete review. You know, we didn't want to sort of gloss over things. So that's really been helpful. And the way that this has ended up working is, so we'll get a chunk of rooms ready for punch list. We'll let Multivista know that they're ready and the date. We'll let the architects know and owner know. Multivista will come out. It'll take, like Jason said, 24 hours to get everything uploaded. And then the architect has an opportunity sort of at their leisure, you know, when it's convenient, still has the same ability to look at everything in the room and really zoom in. And then the way that it goes, we use PlanGrid for a lot of projects at Whiting Turner, including science building. And what that does is allows the architect to actually just sort of take screen grabs of this and then import these photos right into PlanGrid as a punch list item. So they tag the location, obviously, which has the floor, the room, etc., and you know which wall it is. But it's a really good way because a lot of times in the past, when you do punch lists, you know, there'd be a lot of descriptions. Not everything would have a picture, and a lot of times the subcontractors get confused as to what it is that the punch list is asking for, and sometimes we get confused in the past too. I know that's the case. So this really allows for a very clear, concise, timely way, so we can sort of hit different areas sort of on an ongoing basis, rather than, you know, have sort of what everybody I think would agree sometimes can be long and painful punch list walks. And it also allows for a level of documentation that we just have never been able to see before. The other one thing I wanted to touch on was the webcam is valuable, especially for construction, for a number of reasons. One, if you're working remotely, I can actually log in, pan, tilt, and zoom this camera. Unfortunately, we're finishing up the facade on the south side, which is where our webcam is. But I literally can look at, I've been looking online with the roofer, you know, looking at details, and also we've used it for security. It allows me to look in and see, okay, the landscaping got started. Guys working on the roof of the vestibule there. So in future projects, for me anyway, I will do my best to make sure we have not just one webcam, but enough webcams to really get a picture of what's going on. And as Jason said, it's all archived, and we have thefts. Every construction job occasionally has a theft, but it also, we've used this to actually go back and look at who's taking, for instance, a bunch of copper pipe out of the building. So there are just a ton of good reasons in my mind to use this technology, and it's come just so far. Like David said, the platform's nice and seamless, and it's been an invaluable tool for us. And who knows how things will progress in the future, but the way the punch list is going, it's very accurate. The subs love getting pictures of what they are supposed to be fixing. It just really makes a huge difference. And that's about it for me.
Great, thank you, Trey. Thank you, David. And we'll move on to question and answer for a few minutes. There's a few questions on the group chat. The first was measurable data. Does this need to be set up prior to the photo being taken, or is this inherent to the nature of the photo?
So there's my colleague Nick McNutt is showing one sample of technology that's out there right now. This is pretty light data. It's a camera. It captures within a millimeter or a few millimeters accuracy. You do not need to set anything up. We can come through and capture this information on the fly during construction at critical milestones. We use it for whatever the client's driving us and whoever the client is. We're pretty much driven top down these days, owner, GC, but now architects are really taking a look at us because of the whole COVID scenario. But this measurable data in terms of what Nick's pointing out here is where the blocking's at and where it's located. This information is captured in the field with a camera, and it's captured right before closing. So there's no pre setup to that.
So is that, do you have to calibrate it in order to take that measurement, or can you just literally just measure with the program?
So what happens is the camera is the photographer is taking 3 to 9 shots at fixed distances from 8 to 15 feet, and those images are creating a 3-dimensional photograph, and then that calibrates the measurable data. And we use it on all new slabs. This tech just came out earlier this year, so any new slab is being documented in that capacity. And then if the owner, a GC or design team want that visual documentation for walls or ceilings, it can be leveraged for that too.
Very good. The other question is, who is producing the as-built documentation? Is that something the contractor does, a third-party architect?
So Malta Vista, if I can, now that the credit session's over, if I can speak directly to the company that I'm part of. The as-built information is captured by a trained team of third-party individuals that are following a pre-sequenced scope, following critical path milestones in a very comprehensive nature. They are all trained in flying drones. They're all trained in the methods of overlapping measurable photography, traditional SLR photography, immersive photography, immersive scanning. And they're all armed to the teeth on every job site because there's different factors, different phases that would need captured at any given time based on the bell-shaped curve of construction's scheduling. So it is a third party. It's non-biased, so that's the benefit. And it's put onto a shareable platform, if that answers the question.
I can just add from an owner's perspective that, this is a supplement to traditional as-built requirements. I mean, we still have traditional as-built documentation required from the architect and contractor, but this is a tool that we've all used throughout the job that becomes part of that documentation, but it doesn't really change the contractual responsibility to provide as-builts from the contractor in terms of drawing updates and a set of drawings that represent the as-built conditions in the field. But this stuff is all archived on construction drawings. So the base that these photos are oriented to are done from the actual construction documents that we're using to build the project. So they coordinate really well with the final as-builts.
We are, as another emerging tech that's not part of the AIA presentation is Scan to Plan. So that is being rolled out nationally now, where any existing space, slabs as well, can be scanned in a photographic capacity, but it's laser scanning and it's cloud point data, and that information can be used for takeoff, and it will evolve into true as-built information from what we are calling Scan to Plan. Scan, plan, and measure. This is a sample of what we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you can do here is this can be dumped into your 3D modeling. So SLAB, this can be documented. Existing buildings with no as-built information can be scanned. You can visually get a existing condition knowledge of it, but then also have metadata that can be thrown into your 3D model. This wasn't part of the AIA presentation, but we plan to circle back in a month or two and focus on a training session on scan, plan, and measure and model technology.
Okay, real quick, two more questions. How does one specify this in Division 1?
The specification has been condensed. It focuses on the interactive indexing and third-party aspects of it, of course. And then there's a scope development section specific to the nature of the project. I'd be happy to talk offline with everyone, share a copy of it, or if I could share that in some capacity with everyone. We are seeing it come up more often now. And it's good because there's becoming a competitive landscape. Malta Vista pioneered all this concept about 17 years ago, but you are seeing a competitive environment, which is good for us because it makes it legal to not have to necessarily sole source in a competitive environment because we were the only ones doing it. Now there's other companies out there that are doing this type of technology, so that specification is becoming more relevant. So the specification is out there. I can share that with whoever. It's a non-branded specification.
Okay. And the last question is about the nature of the photos. I think you had touched on this, that anyone can take a photo and upload it to the platform, but it did appear that only the Malta Vista photos were scalable and measurable. Would that be accurate?
No, we can provide what happened in say August 2016 is Malta Vista was acquired by Hexagon AB, and so Leica Geosystems is now our sister company. So they are some of the experts in developing scanning equipment based on survey, but now they have a building environment team, and so some of the hardware, in addition to us capturing high frequency visits and milestones, we also can impart and train on how to use the hardware for your team as well.
Okay. But in terms of that question, I think I'm the one that mentioned that anybody can take a photo and upload it to the platform. You know, that may not be measurable or scalable, but it's just an opportunity for a variety of ways to collect information and keep it all stored in the same location and the same platform. So it's just an additional part of the tool.
Yeah.
If the architect wanted to call attention to something and take a very specific picture so he could ask a question about it, or he wants to share it with the team or the contractor, it's just an easy way to put it up into the platform and make it part of a database that everybody has access to.
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about just capturing a picture off the app, off your smartphone, is that your administrative work is done. You can take a picture of something you notice in a walkthrough and write that note in the field, and it's automatically put on the cloud, tied to the drawing, and you can share it from the field, or you can just keep it as a note to yourself. So that is very empowering, and it cuts down on admin work and office trailer time. Any other questions?
I don't believe so this time. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed this presentation, and appreciate this technology as a new tool and sort of a kit of tools that the architect has at their disposal to furnish construction administration and really contract administration during construction.
Yep, we are definitely finding. I'm sorry, go ahead, Basil.
That's all right. And also just for everyone to please stay safe during to come out of this pandemic.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna. Yeah, stay safe, everyone. We appreciate your time this morning. And for your credit hours, I'll coordinate with AIA to get everything out to you guys.
Okay, the next Practice Management Committee presentation will be managing remote employees in a post-COVID world. Please stay tuned for that presentation. Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Eric.
Thank you.